I know that you've told me in the past that you do yoga, right? You still do
Yep,
yoga?
absolutely. I give myself a rule of doing at least 5 to 10 minutes a day. If I could fit in a full 45 minute to an hour session, that's great. If I'm crunched on time that day, I at least do, it's called gravity yoga, and I'll do at least like 5 to 10 minutes of that at night.
What does that look like? What is gravity yoga?
So this is a very interesting concept. So in yoga, I was going to yoga and I feel that my flexibility was not as strong as it could have been. And I didn't understand because I would keep doing something like downward dog and my hamstrings would still be a little tight. And I arrived at this cool thing that came across my Facebook feed explaining this concept of gravity yoga. And it made quite a bit of sense because in normal yoga, we're never holding the poses for too long, unless we do yin yoga and we're holding a pose for 2 to 3 minutes. However, we don't, if we're only holding a pose for 30 seconds and flowing into something else, it's enough to get mobility, but it's not enough to release the muscle fascia itself. And so by using something like gravity yoga is basically using gravity to give you the stretch. So we would do a simple sort of like fold over, where keeping our legs straight and just hang the arms down to the floor. But instead of getting out of that in 30 seconds to a minute, we would hold that for like a full 5 minutes if we can. And believe me, once you get to 2.5 minutes, when I did it the very first time, the back of my legs was literally shaking. It felt like they were vibrating, is how much tension was still in the muscle. And I pushed through it and do some deep breathing. And once you get to minute 4 or 5, like after you're done doing those types of stretches, you literally feel instantaneously more flexible. And I've never felt that through a regular yoga class. I always feel better after yoga. But with gravity yoga, is like these short little mini sessions, but you feel so flexible and loose right after.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I definitely want to give that a try or look into that more. Because yeah, I feel the same way. You know, flexibility is not my not my forte at the moment. I could definitely use work on that. I personally practice Kundalini yoga, but I do it's more of like a meditation practice than it is like a yoga practice. In the sense that it's mostly sitting in an upright position and doing like breathing exercises. So you do like breath of fire, where you just right,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
or like the twist breaths, and you do stuff like that. It definitely helps like free up energy and maybe like your spinal fluid. I love it. It makes me feel really good every day. But I was just wondering if you had any experiences with that.
Definitely incorporating breathing practices and things. A little bit of Kundalini I've tried before. I do like a lot of dynamic movement and flowing because I sort of use it as my exercise workout time too. But yeah, but speaking of that, like this breathing concept, so this is amazing. And this is how yoga and breathing has helped out so much. Because we know like meditation is great. And a lot of people, like we should all be doing meditation. We always hear about it, we read about it. If you're anything like me, it's very hard to turn this monkey mind off. This thing is just in there doing somersaults and clapping the cymbals together. And so what happens is if I sit there and I say, okay, well, I got to meditate, and we're taught in meditation, well, we got to try to clear the mind, don't think any thoughts. And the thought of trying not to think any thoughts is thinking. And so the mind is not shutting off. So what I found for me personally is that yoga, when you're holding a pose or you're just focusing on your breath itself by sitting there, what happens is if you focus on your breathing pattern, that alone is meditation because you cannot think of anything else but your breathing. So technically, that is meditation because the mind is completely clear and the only thing you can think about is breathing. And that's why I like to do a lot of flowing with yoga because some poses get so intense where you cannot do anything but try to breathe your way through the pain and through the hardship of it. And it literally clears out all of the clutter. It clears out anything that we're worrying about, clears out all the stresses. And it's something I practice personally in my life. When I'm having a bad day and things are starting to get me down, I've definitely started to incorporate more breathing, more yoga, because I know even if it's 5 or 10 minutes after that, I'm going to feel better than before I started.
Yeah, Absolutely. That's awesome. I hope that more people are experimenting with things like yoga, as you know, we're all kind of stuck at home through this pandemic and everything. Uh, you know, it's the perfect way to just, you know, you can get more flexible, more strong. You can also relieve stress at the same time. It just makes so much sense to me. I mean, what, you know, I used to separate like exercise from my yoga practice until one day I was like, why are they separate? Like, can I just put them all together? And like, even if I move right in from a yoga pose into like doing some push-ups and then back, you know, it's all just focusing on the same type on the body, really. Taking that time each day to focus on your body, I feel like it's been so beneficial for me.
Yeah, yoga has been such a game. So coming from a personal training background, I had gotten into bodybuilding and powerlifting and things like that, and it's great. And I love lifting because there's something about getting aggressiveness out through lifting something heavy. However, what happens is sometimes we focus too much on that, and that was my own case. Is, oh, I'm going to focus on building my body and lifting heavy and being strong, and then I would have joint injuries and shoulder injuries and tightness in my lower back, and all of these different mobility patterns would sort of show up and be like, wow, like here I am working out to try to be healthier, and I'm putting myself in more pain. I have less mobility, less flexibility, and it didn't really make sense. And in a way, I'm so glad that we have this pandemic, because I have not lifted weights in probably the last, I don't know what it is, 55 days since the gym is closed. So I had not touched weights at all. And it's forced me to use my own body weight in order to work out, which is actually much more harder. And my whole concept is like, we have no right going to try to lift a 300-pound bench press if we can't even hold our own body weight off the floor. So yoga is actually much more challenging. Yoga is actually, and because it's you're fighting against yourself. You're not fighting against weights or some outside thing. It's your own self. So maybe today you go to start and you can only hold things for 15 seconds. That's great. Tomorrow, try for 20. The next day, try for 25. Eventually, you'll get a couple of minutes. Eventually, you'll be able to do an entire flow for 30, 40 minutes. Like, we may think yoga is a soft thing, especially as guys. Believe me, my ego was shattered the very first yoga class I did, because I almost did not make it through the end of the class. Meanwhile, all these women and everything were around me, and they're just flowing through like this is just super easy. It's a piece of cake, and I'm over there like holding and shaking and sweating. So it's taken some time to get used to it, but oh man, it's such an amazing experience.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. I like paddleboard yoga too. Give that extra
That
challenge.
I've never done paddleboard yoga. I actually tried to get on a paddleboard. It's something I'm going to have to revisit. This was down in Rockaway Beach, so it wasn't on like flat lake water. It was in the ocean, so I think that's why it was pretty hard. But
Yeah,
oh man, just to stand up on that thing was a workout in and of itself.
yeah. And I'm the type of person where like I try a lot of different stuff to figure out what I like a lot. Um, and so I've been through stages where I was lifting heavy weights every day too. And then I got to almost like the same story you just told. I started to realize like I should be able to have more control of my body, and I feel like it would be more empowering to do it that way. So then I started doing more calisthenics and pull-ups, you know, dips, like anything that I could do like that. And then it wasn't until like this year really that I started experimenting with yoga. But I love all the body exercises that you can do with no weights, no anything. It's completely free. You can do it at a park if you're talking about doing pull-ups or calisthenic stuff. And it's really challenging, and it keeps me like engaged in the process, you know. Like with pull-ups, it's like you can learn to do a muscle up where you go past the pull-up and do a muscle up, and just trying to learn how to do that keeps me coming back for more and more and more. So it's one of those things where it's just like you got to commit to the process, and it's just fun, you know. It's just more fun rather than, to me it was like, all right, let me just put another, you know, 20 pounds on my bench press. Like, what's the
Yeah.
payoff? You know, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, and then we're always going to get to a point where there's a limit strength concept. So me and my body is like, yeah, I'm going to get as strong as possible. But there's going to be an upper limit where that stops. It's not like I'm going to go grab 2,000 pounds off the floor and just hoist it over my head. That's probably physically not going to be possible. Whereas when we do body weight stuff and dynamic stuff, the possibilities are endless, because if we get to poses that become too easy, now we can elevate our body off the floor. Now we can do handstands. When that becomes too easy, now we can do handstand push-ups. Like and if that ever became too easy, which it probably won't because they're hard as shit to do, you could try doing those with one hand. So the possibilities are limitless in regard to working with your own body.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that. That's awesome. That's kind of how I was thinking about it too, and it kind of changed the way that I look at it. Hey, free thinker, this human life is more amazing than we give credit for. The pain, the fun, the creativity, the mistakes, and the connected, shared experiences. We are here to expand. Let's do it together.